Mr. President, thank you very much for having welcomed Swiss television and our program Rundschau here in Damascus.
You're most welcome, Syria.
First, please allow me to clarify one thing. May I ask you every question?
Every question without exception.
I am asking because one of your conditions is that interview is being broadcast in its full version. Are you afraid that we might manipulate your statements?
You should answer that question, but I think we should build this relation upon the trust, and I think you are worried about the trust of your audience, so I don't think so. I think you have good reputation in conveying the truth in every subject you try to cover.
Do you see it as a lie that the world considers you as to be a war criminal?
That depends on what the reference in defining that word. Is it the international law, or is it the Western agenda, or the Western political mood, let's say, that's been defined by vested interest politicians in the West? According to the international law, as a president and as government and as Syrian army, we are defending our country against the terrorists that have been invading Syria as proxies to other countries. So if you want to go back to that word, the war criminal, I think first one who should be tried under that title are the Western officials, started with the George Bush who invaded Iraq without any amendment from the Security Council. Second, Cameron and Sarkozy, who invaded Libya and destroyed Libya without amendment from the Security Council. Third, the Western officials who are supporting the terrorists during the last 5 years in Syria, either by providing them with political umbrella or supporting them directly with armaments, or implementing embargo on the Syrian people that's led to the killing of thousands of Syrian civilians.
But we are here to talk about your role in this war. And the US Secretary of State, John Kerry, called you Adolf Hitler and Saddam Hussein in the same breath. Does it bother you?
No, because they don't have credibility. This is first of all. Second, for me as president, what I care about first and foremost is how the Syrian people look at me. Second, my friend around the world, not my personal friends as president, I mean our friends as Syrians, like Russia, like Iran, like China, like the rest of the world, not the West. The West always try to personalize things, and just to avoid the real problem, which is about deposing government and getting rid of certain president, just to bring puppets to suit their agenda. So going back to the beginning, no, I don't care about what Kerry said at all. It has no influence on me.
You're the president of a country whose citizens are fleeing. Half of your fellow citizens. The people are not only fleeing because of the terrorists of ISIS or the rebels, but also because of you.
What do you mean by me? I'm not asking people to leave Syria. I'm not attacking people. I'm defending the people. Actually, the people leaving Syria for two reasons. The first reason is the action of the terrorists, direct action in killing the people. The second one is the action of the terrorists in order to paralyze the life in Syria, attacking schools, destroying infrastructure in every sector. Third, the embargo of the West that pressed many Syrians to find their livelihood outside Syria. These are the main reasons. If you can see that the second factor and the third factor are related, I mean the role of the terrorists in the West in undermining and hurting the livelihoods of the Syrian is one, and let's say is commonality between the terrorists and Europe.
When you speak of terrorists, who do you mean by that? Surely ISIS, but also the Free Syrian Army or the Kurds?
What I mean is like what you mean as a Swiss citizen. If you have anyone who carry machine guns or armaments and killing people under any titles and committed vandalism, destroying public or private properties, this is terrorist. Anyone who adopts political way in order to make any change he wants, this is not a terrorist. You can call him opposition, but you cannot call somebody who is killing people or holding armaments, you cannot call him opposition in your country in my country as well.
But you don't have any free opposition in your country?
Of course you have. Of course you have. You have real opposition. You have people who live in Syria, who their grassroots are the Syrian people. They're not opposition who were forged in other countries like France or UK or Saudi Arabia or Turkey. We have them. And you can go and meet them and deal with them with your camera. You can do that yourself.
How do you explain to your 3 children what is happening in Aleppo? I'm sure that you're discussing about it at the family table.
Yeah, of course, if I'm going to explain to them, I'm going to explain about what's happening in Syria, not only in Aleppo, taking into consideration that my children are full grown now. They understand what's going on in Syria. But if you want to explain to them or to any other child what's happening, I'm going to explain about the role of the terrorists, about the role of Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia in supporting those terrorists with money, with logistic supports, and the role of the West in supporting those terrorists either through armament or through helping them with the propaganda and the publicity. I'm going to explain to them in full what's going on.
Do you, as a father, also say you have nothing to do with the bombardments of the hospitals in Aleppo?
Look, when they say that we are bombarding the hospital, it means that we are killing civilians. That's the meaning of the word. The question, why would the government kill civilians, whether in hospitals or in streets or schools or anywhere? You are talking about killing Syrians. When we kill Syrians as a government or as army, the biggest part of the Syrian society will be against us. You cannot succeed in your war if you are killing civilians. So this story and this narrative is a mendacious narrative, to be frank with you. Of course, unfortunately, every war is bad war, and every war have innocent victims, whether children, women, elderly, any other civilian, any other innocent who's not part of this war, he could pay the price. This is unfortunately. That's why we have to fight terrorism. When we don't say that, it's like saying, according to that question or to that narrative that you may reflect in your question, that the terrorists, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, ISIS, are protecting the civilians, and we, as government, are killing civilians. Who can believe that story? No one.
But who else got airplanes or bunker-busting bombs besides your army?
It's like you're saying that everyone who's killed in Syria was killed by the airplanes or aircraft, military aircraft. The majority of the people were killed by mortars shelled by the terrorists on them while they are at schools, in their hospitals, in the streets, anywhere else. It's not related to the aerial bombardment. Sometimes you have aerial bombardment against the terrorists, but that doesn't mean that every bomb that fell somewhere was by airplane or by the Syrian army. If you are talking about specific incident, let's say, we have to verify that specific incident, but I'm answering you in general now.
But you have the power to change the situation also for the children in Aleppo.
Of course, that's why...
Will you do that?
Exactly, that's our mission according to the Constitution, according to the law, that we have to protect the people, that we have to get rid of those terrorists from Aleppo. This is where we can protect the civilians. How can you protect them while they are under the control of the terrorists? They've been killed by them and they've been controlled fully by the terrorists. Is it our role to sit aside and watch? Is that how we can protect the Syrian people? We need to attack the terrorists. That's self-evident.
May I show you a picture?
Of course.
This young boy has become the symbol of the war. I think you know this picture?
Of course I saw it.
His name is Omran, 5 years old,
Yeah.
covered with blood, scared, traumatized. Is there anything you would like to say to Omran and his family?
No, there's something I would like to say to you first of all, because I want you to go back after my interview and go to the internet to see the same picture of the same child with his sister. Both were rescued by what they call them in the West white helmets, which is a facelift of Al-Nusra in Aleppo. They were rescued twice, each one in different incident, and just as part of the publicity of those white helmets. None of these incidents were true. You can have it manipulated, and it is manipulated. I'm going to send you those 2 pictures, and they are on the internet. Just to see that this is a forged picture, not a real one. We have real pictures of children being harmed But this one in specific is a forged one.
But it's true that innocent civilians are dying. Exactly. In Aleppo.
Of course, not only in Aleppo, in Syria. But now we are talking about in Aleppo because the whole hysteria in the West about Aleppo, for one reason, not because Aleppo is under siege, because Aleppo has been under siege for the last 4 years by the terrorists, and we haven't heard a question by Western journalists about what's happening in Aleppo that time, and we haven't heard a single statement by Western official regarding the situation of Aleppo. Now they are talking about Aleppo recently just because the terrorists are in bad shape. This is the only reason, because the Syrian army are making advancement, and the Western country, mainly the United States and its allies like UK and France, feeling that they are losing the last scars of terrorism in Syria, and the main bastion of that terrorism today is Aleppo.
Everything is allowed in this war for you?
No, of course you have the international law, you have the human rights charter, you have to obey. But in every war in the world, during the history, you cannot make sure 100% that you can control everything in that direction. You always have a flaw. That's why I said every war is a bad war. But there's difference between individual mistakes and the policy of the government. The policy of the government to say that we are attacking civilians, we are attacking hospitals, we are attacking schools, we are doing all these atrocities, that's not possible because you cannot work or go against your interest. You cannot go against your duty toward the people. Otherwise, you are going to lose the war as a government. You cannot withstand such a ferocious war for 5.5 years while you are killing your own people. That's impossible. But you always have mistakes, whether it's about crossfire, it's about individual mistake. Bring me a single war in the recent history that it was clean war. You don't have.
Do you have made any mistakes too in this war?
As president, I defined the policy of the country. According to our policy, the main pillars of this policy during the crisis is to fight terrorism, which I think is correct, and we're not going to change it, of course. To make dialogue between the Syrians, and I think which is correct. The third one, which is proven to be effective during the last 2 years, is the reconciliations, local reconciliations with the militants who has been holding machine guns against the people and against the government and against the army. And this one has again proven that it's a good step. So these are the pillars of this policy. You cannot talk about mistake in this policy. You can talk about mistakes in the implementation of the policy that could be related to the individuals.
You still believe in a diplomatic solution?
Definitely, but you don't have something called diplomatic solution or military solution. You have solution, but every conflict, it has many aspects. One of them is security, could be like in our situation, and the other one is the political acts or aspect of this solution. For example, if you ask me about how can you deal with Al-Qaeda, with Al-Nusra, with ISIS, is it possible to make negotiations with them? They won't make. They're not ready to. They wouldn't. They have their own ideology, repugnant ideology. So you cannot make political solution with this part. You have to fight them. You have to get rid of them. Well, if you talk about dialogue, you can make dialogue with two entities. The first one, political entities, any political entities, whether with or against or in the middle. And with every militant who is ready to give in his armament for the sake of the security or stability in Syria. Of course, we will believe in it.
There are news from Russia about a short humanitarian pause in Aleppo on Thursday. What does it mean, this humanitarian pause? Can you explain?
Yeah, it's a short halting of operations in order to allow the humanitarian supply to get into different areas in Aleppo, and at the same time to allow the civilians who wanted to leave the terrorist-held areas to move to the government-controlled area.
Is this really a step, an important step?
Of course, it is an important step at the beginning, but it's not enough. It's about the continuation. How can you allow those civilians to leave? The majority of them wanted to leave the area held by the terrorists, but they won't allow them. The others shoot them, or they kill their families if they leave that area.
Russia is on your side. What does it mean for you?
No, it's not on my side. It's on the international law side. It's on the other side, which is opposite to the terrorist sides. This is the position of Russia, because they wanted to make sure that the international law prevails, not the Western agenda in toppling every government that doesn't fit with their agendas. They wanted to make sure that the terrorism doesn't prevail in that area that would affect negatively the Russians themselves, Russia itself as a country, and Europe and the rest of the world. That's what it means for Russia to stand beside the legitimate Syrian government and the Syrian people.
Mr. President, you use chemical weapons and barrel bombs in Syria against your own population. These are UN reports. You can't ignore it.
You're talking about two different issues. The chemical issue it was proven to be false, and they haven't a shred of evidence about the Syrian army using chemical weapons, particularly before we give up our arsenal in 2013. Now we don't have it anyway. Before that, it was fiction, because if you want to use such mass destruction armament, you're going to kill thousands of people on one incident, and we didn't have such an incident. Besides that, we wouldn't use it because you're going to kill your own people, and that's against your interests. So this is a false allegation. We don't have to waste our time with it. You live in Syria. There's traditional war, but there's nothing related to mass destruction armament.
But the UN report is not a fiction.
The UN report never has been credible, never. And because they put reports based on allegations, based on other reports, on false report, and they say this is a report. Did they send a delegation to make investigation? They sent one in 2013, and it couldn't prove at all that the Syrian army used chemical weapons. This is first. The second, which is more important, the first incident happened at the beginning of 2013 in Aleppo, when we said that the terrorists used chemical weapons against our army, and we invited the United Nations to send delegation. We did. And that time, the United States opposed that delegation because they already knew that this investigation, of course, if it's impartial, is going to prove that those terrorists, their proxies, used chemical armaments against the Syrian army. Regarding the barrel bomb, I want to ask you what the definition of barrel bomb. If you go to our army, you don't have in our record something called barrel bomb. So how do you understand, and just want to know how I can answer you, what a barrel bomb is? We have bombs.
It's a destruction, and it's against humanitarian law.
Every bomb can make destruction, every bomb. So you don't have bomb to make nothing. So this is a word that's been used in the West as part of the Western narrative in order to show that there's indiscriminate bomb that's been killing civilians indiscriminately, and that oppose the Western narrative. I'll show you the contradiction. In other areas, they say that we are bombarding intentionally the hospital, and you mentioned that. And we are targeting intentionally the schools, and we targeted intentionally the convoys to Aleppo last month. Those targets need high precision missiles. So they have to choose which part of the narrative. We either have indiscriminate bombs or we have high precision bomb. They keep contradicting in the same narrative. This is the Western reality now. So which one to choose, I can answer you. But again, we don't have any indiscriminate bomb. If we kill people indiscriminately, it means we are losing the war because people will be against us. I cannot kill the Syrian people, either morally or for my interest, because in that case, I'm going to push the Syrian community and society toward the terrorists, not vice versa.
I would like to mention the subject of torture prisons, Mr. President. Amnesty speaks of 17,000 dead. Regarding the prison of Sadnaya, there are still horrible reports. When will you allow an independent observer into that prison?
Yeah, independent. Amnesty International is not independent, and it's not impartial.
ICRC?
We did discuss it with the Red Cross. We didn't discuss it. It should be discussed in our institution. If we want to allow, if there's allegation, it could be discussed. We don't say yes or no, but the report that you have mentioned, it was a report made by Qatar and financed by Qatar. You don't know the source, you don't know the names of those victims, nothing verified about that report. It was paid by Qatar directly in order to vilify and smear the Syrian government and the Syrian army.
There are a lot of eyewitnesses.
No one knows who are they. You don't have anything clear about that. It's not verified, so no.
Then open the door for organizations like Red Cross.
It's not my decision to tell you yes or no. We have institution. If we need to discuss this part, we need to go back to the institution before saying yes or no.
Why are you sure that you are going to win this war?
Because you have to defend your country, and you have to believe that you can win the war to defend your country. If you don't have that belief, you will lose. You know, part of the war is what you believe in. So it's self-evident and very intuitive that you have to have that belief.
If you walk through Damascus, your picture is everywhere, in every shop, in every restaurant, in every car, a symbol for a dictator. Is this your way to fix your power?
There's a difference between dictator and dictatorship. Dictator is about the person. I didn't ask anyone to put my picture in Syria, and I never did it. This first. Second, to describe someone as a dictator, you should ask his people. I mean, only his people can say that he's a dictator or he's a good guy.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having answered our question for Swiss Television and the Rundschau.
Thank you for coming to Syria.